Alright, now in preparation for laying our flex track, what I like to do is try to have my turnouts in place, and then I can go from there. And right now, here's a curved turnout, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this in place. I'm not going to put a lot of glue there, that way it's not as hard to remove if I need to replace it, but I do want some in there to hold it down. Now also, you want to avoid putting glue at your switch point here. So what I do is I will just mark where that's at, like that, and then I can remove this. I'm going to put some of our glue down, and just put a little bit there. I'm going to put some along here. I'm not going to get too crazy. Just not want some to hold it down. Take your putty knife. You want to spread that out fairly thin. You don't want it oozing up between the ties. So, just like that. And like I said, I'm not going for super strength on this turnout. Alright, and now we just lay that in place. As you can see, I've already marked where my turnouts and everything are going to be on this layout. So I knew right where to put this. And just make sure it's centered in my road bed. And that's actually really nice. It doesn't appear that I need anything to pin or hold that down with. We're going to lay that there. That way we have a good starting point for our track, or ending point, whichever way you want to look at it. I think I will pin that down a little bit in the center. Alright, now I'm going to move over to the opposite side here, and we're going to go off the other curved turnout. If you can see, we're going around here. That's where we're up to. So we're going to do this curved piece right here. Alright, now we're back on the other side. Already removed some extra ties on the ends here, and I didn't point out earlier, but I will now. Make sure you don't throw those extra ties away. Save them, because after you have your track down and secure, we'll come back later on and we'll slide them underneath the gap sections. That way you can't see there's no big gap there. But anyways, that's a video for another time. Now what I like to do is I like to kind of hold this in place as best I can, just to get an idea. And we're going to trim a little bit of extra off this inside rail. As you can see, because we curved it, it ended up sticking out further. So what we do is, like I said, this end's not as important as the other end's going to be. Take your rail nippers, trim some off, and if there's any burr left after cutting, take your file, clean that up a little bit. Don't go crazy, just clean off the burr. We have our new rail joiners. I'm going to slide them on. Now that we have the idea of what it looks like, we're going to lay down our glue now. Alright, there's my bead of glue, or latex caulking, adhesive caulking that I'm using. Now we need to thin that out, spread it out with a putty knife. Alright, as you can see, I have that spread out really thin. It probably looks thicker on camera, but it really isn't. You don't want it oozing up between your ties. Now, time to put our track in our rail joiners. Sorry, I know I'm probably in the way. Alright. Now I'm going to use a combination of push pins and tacks to help me hold this as I work it around the curve. What's nice about this stuff here is the adhesive caulk. It does a great job of holding everything in place. It's got a nice little tack to it. So, and this is Atlas track, so it has a lot of flex to it, I mean. So now the trick is to work this around your curve and get it in place. And try to make it a nice smooth curve all the way around, no dips in and out, flat spots, or straight spots, I mean. Work it all the way around, make sure it looks nice. Like I said, with this glue you really don't even need tacks or anything unless you got a spot that's bumping up on you, because it really holds nice until it dries. Okay, now we're back on the other side. I apologize for the multiple camera angles, but here's our turnout we laid earlier, and we just laid this curve from the other side and it's coming around to meet over here. Now, as you see, we don't have enough flex track to reach the other turnout. Now, I don't do staggered joints. Some people may think that's crazy, but I don't. So what I'm going to do here, as you can see, we have this extra piece of rail here. I'm going to go ahead and nip that. We're going to do this while this glue's wet. I'm going to nip that off pretty close to the same size or length as the other rail. And try to get a nice clean cut on it. I didn't, so I'm going to trim a little bit more off. I'm trying to do this on camera, so I'm not getting it. It's kind of hard. Okay, that's a nice flush cut. Like I said, if you got any burr or anything, clean it up a little bit, especially for the rail joiner. That way it goes on nice and easy. And there we have that. Now we have a new section of flex track. Excuse me, flex track. What I'm going to do here, we're going to slide our rail joints on, or rail joiners, sorry, which I have over here, probably knocking them everywhere. I'm not very well prepared, as you can see. This really, I'll be honest with you, this is really something I did not want to videotape, because it's just, for me, I'd rather just spend my time laying the track and not worrying about videotaping everything. We're going to go ahead and lay these, or join these up. Once again, these are new joiners. Alright, now we have that. Now the trick to not getting a kink in this, we're going to solder this while the rail joint section right here is straight, not curved. You don't want to solder it while it's curved. So do whatever you have to do, pin it, prop it up with something, do anything you need to do, but make sure the joint section is perfectly straight. The last thing we need or want is a kink. We want a nice straight joint. Alright, I have it pinned straight. Let me get my rail joiners evened up here. Slap on a little flux. Grab the soldering iron. And away we go. Alright guys, now we have that soldered. Like I said, the secret is to solder your joint while the joint is straight. Now, as we curve that, we can unpin that, curve it. Look at that, you have a nice curve with no kink at the joint. Now, what we're going to do is go over here and match it up with this turnout. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little bit extra off of this than I really need. Or I mean, leave a little extra. Alright, now we can work with this. Turn around and take some extra ties off here. There we go. Now, let's eyeball this up. If you need to, you can take something like a pen or something to mark your rail. I just try to eyeball things. Don't take too much at one time. You can always take more off, but you can never add any on. Alright, that should do it. Now I'm going to add a little bit more glue along here, slide the rail joiners on, and put that in place. Alright guys, there we have it. We laid a whole section of curved track. Started right here. Worked our way around. Got our solder joint. Keep coming around. I did pin it in a couple locations. This is the solder joint we made just a minute ago after the fact, after we already had our curve in place. Let me see if I can get a close-up of this. As you can see, we have no kink. It's a nice free-flowing rail. Come along and we're connected to the turnout. Now I did not solder this turnout joint. If I don't have to, I'm not going to. It doesn't look like there's much of a kink or anything there because we are going from a curve into a curve, and that's generally where you're going to get a kink, you know, like a kink at your joint there. I do have some pins in place here to hold this flex track in a curved position until it dries. That way it does avoid a kink right there because naturally it's going to want to straighten out. Alright, next step, we'll let this dry, and then sometime down the road what we'll do, we'll take these extra rail joints. I just trim the nubs off. Sometimes I have to run them across a sanding block. I'll just take them across the sanding block, thin them down a little bit, slap some glue down, slide them under into place here.